All right. Hey, this is John over at FMS. I'm here today with Aaron DeHogue, who's publisher over at Banyan Hill. Today, we're going to talk about, I think, one of the biggest and perhaps scariest things that's going on in the industry. And Aaron and I were just talking that a lot of people are scared to talk about this, and that is promotion and copy in the new environment, with the FTC being much more involved in looking at publishers in the space. And I think that Aaron has been one of the best publishers in the industry, had lots of great successes. He's always struck me as one of the publishers who talks more about product quality than promotional quality. And I think that's kind of striking. And so I'm really glad to have you here, Aaron, and thanks for being willing to kind of talk through how you see this situation these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on and bringing up this subject, because I think a lot of people need to hear it. And, I'll just mention overall that I'll be talking about a lot of things that we're doing, my company's doing, Banyan Hill. It's not going to be completely encompassing, so we're not going to be able to cover everything. And probably from my legal disclaimer is it doesn't completely cover everything that Agora is doing, and I'm not speaking on behalf of them. But my hope is that just through this, we are able to see how a lot of this new regulation is a good thing for our industry and something to be excited about and to lean into. And I put together a cool PowerPoint, so I don't know if you want me to dive into that or if we need to cover anything else before we jump into that.
Well, I think that, unless you cover this in the PowerPoint, I think, so that's a very hard line, right? Like, because I've heard like people taking the other approach, like, oh my God, this is the end of the good days. And then there's the like, very few people, I would say, are on your side of the fence that says, hey, wait a second, this isn't terrible. This isn't like they're trying to kill our businesses. They're actually like, there's good that's going to come from this. And that's a very stark line that I haven't seen a lot of people take.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I'm gonna jump ahead into my PowerPoint because I cover this, and I'm gonna skip ahead and then I'll come kind of back to the beginning. But I'll start this off by telling you guys, a quick story. And it starts with this picture. All right, so you guys can see this picture on your screen. And this is a picture of a hog slat. Now, just kind of a background, I grew up in North Carolina in a small country town. And my father built these really large hog barns. And what they would do with these big hog barns is they would have these slats of concrete that you can see here on your screen, and the hogs would stand on them. And the idea was that the people come by and spray all the hogs down and the manure down underneath it into this big waste pit that would then flush out. Well, in the late 90s, this was my dad's business. This is what he did for a living, okay? And he was very successful at it. And in the late 90s, a new law came out that basically said you cannot build any more hog barns in Eastern North Carolina, where my dad was from. So his business is done, right? It's shut down. And so the law completely altered his business. It stopped it. Except my dad looked at these hog slats, and growing up on the East Coast there in North Carolina, he realized there might be another use for these things. And so he decided to take these slats of concrete and use them for pier decking, because a bunch of people live on the coast and we get hit by lots of hurricanes. And so he took these slats and just used them for the pier decking, and that would prevent the decks from getting splintery. It would prevent, when hurricanes come, the water would actually go through those slits in the concrete, and they're much cooler on the feet. And the business took off. It's 20 years later, and my dad still has his business called DeHogue Metal and Marine Decking. And you'll find these piers all across the coast of North Carolina. Okay, I tell this story because here is a very similar scenario where the government came in and said, look, the rules are changing. We're cracking down on this. And instead of just kind of giving up, my father looked at it and said, well, what else can I do, right? Mm-hmm. And so he created this entire business. And you know what, John, he doesn't have to smell hog crap every single day. So that's the other benefit of it. So I just wanted to give that as a bit of a story to some people, that this happens in our world all the time, right? Where the rules of the game change. We've seen this with the FTC, but we've seen it everywhere else. And so as leaders of our companies, I think we just have to be creative enough to figure out, okay, how do we work with this in order to create an even better business?
Yeah. No, that's a great story. That's a great story. Because it is such a stark thing right now that I think that hopefully we don't have to create entirely new businesses, but I think a new approach is definitely one of the ways. But I do think that actually the issue of creating new models is a huge one that's on the horizon here, that we are not even on the horizon, it's happening. But
I agree. Yeah, hopefully we don't have to create new businesses, but hopefully we're able to adjust the businesses we have in order to create a more sustainable model. And to kind of kick this off, I called the presentation the reset, because I think a lot of us have to reset the way we're thinking about our business, because a lot of the rules have changed for us, or they're just being enforced at a much higher level. And see if I can get this working. And I put up here an image of the current environment, and I think this is what a lot of people are feeling. Here you have two boxers going at it, and one has gloves on and one doesn't. And I've talked to a lot of people on Agora about this, because I feel like sometimes we're the ones boxing with gloves, and some of our competition doesn't have gloves. In other words, we're the ones that are really following a lot of these new rules and regulations very carefully. And sometimes it's hard to do because the effectiveness of our copy seems to be weaker. And in many ways, we seem to be losing the fight to a lot of people who don't have the gloves on. And sometimes I feel like they're getting by. And it's like, I've even said, guys, look, it's hard for us to win this battle on the ad network sometimes with our copy, right? Because the competition a lot of times seems like they're able to say things that we're not allowed to say, that we've self-regulated and gone above and beyond in order to regulate what we can say. So that is a bit of the current environment that a lot of people are now. And I just want to, I guess, recognize that and say, hey, sometimes I feel your pain. But I also want to say that I truly believe that this crackdown, maybe for lack of a better word, from the FTC is good. My explanation is, it used to be that the company with the greatest copy team would prevail. Didn't matter if they had great products. But now it's the company with the best gurus and their products that will prevail, as long as they have a really creative copy team. And just kind of to break that down, the old law was great copy team equals success. The new law is great gurus plus great copy team equals success. So in other words, I've always felt like in this business, and we've heard it, John, you and I have been in this business for a long time now, that the company with the best copy team is going to win, and they're just going to be above and beyond everybody else. But I think now we've created an environment, and it's a good environment, where it's really the company with the best products out there are going to do the best, because of a lot of the new rules and regulations. You really have to be honest, authentic, and transparent about your products, and make sure that you're revealing the full track record. Make sure that when you use testimonials, that they're very clear on the amount of money that had to be invested, how long it took to make the gains, things like that. And so the company that has the best products, they're going to do better, and you're going to create a sustainable business.
Yeah, and that's where I think like one of the things that strikes me from that is that we all know, if you've been in the business long enough, you've seen lots of promotions that were these really great promotional ideas that are wildly disconnected from the underlying deliverable. Like the promo was better than the product by like a factors of 100. And promised things that maybe they hoped they were going to get, but it was just never delivered that way. Or there's the other people who they were, skirting the rules, to the point where they were just framing things in ways that, like, you could say it about it, but it's so out of context as to be untrue.
Right.
And that's kind of the stuff that's gone away. It's almost like all the lazy kind of stuff goes away first and foremost.
I agree. And so it does bring us all back to, okay, at the end of the day, do we have great products? Do we have great gurus on our team? And are we doing our customers, a great service? And that's very important to me. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that when someone buys our product, that they're going to be better off with it than without it. And so I think you see a lot more companies like ours do well. So a couple of the key changes that are coming in place and I just want to talk about is, I brought these up very briefly in what I was just saying, but track records, for example, the big rule is that we have to be a lot more transparent about our track records. Gone are the days where you can really, I guess, like you said, you're still being transparent on what the track record is, but there's ways to play with numbers, right? To make it seem better than it is. So at the end of the day, right now for us at Banyan Hill, if a product has a bad track record, if it's underperforming the market or let's say the index, we can't promote it. You know, or the guru has to turn things around pretty quickly, right? I mean, I'm not saying like if it's underperforming the market in the last month, 2 months or 3 months, but it was like overall you're looking at going, yeah, this is underperforming the market or the index. The guru has to turn things around or they have to tweak the system or we got to kill the product and start over. And that's hard for a lot of people to do, but that's really the situation we're in. And that's a big change we've had to make. And that's been tough to do. We have to be clear also on when we are revealing our top gains and that these top gains are not typical. So that's a big thing that we've started to do at our company so that if, you know, this is tricky too, right? Because sometimes you have like an option service, right? That maybe their average, on average, their trade is making a 5% gain. And that's good because they make like 50 trades over the course of the year. At the end of the day, that's really good. But sometimes on marketing wise, that doesn't sound good for some reason in our industry, right? So a lot of times we still want to be able to say, hey, here's some of our top gains. You can say these are our top gains, you know, but at the end of the day, you still have to come back in and say, you know, and you know, that these are our top gains. And at the end of the day, if you would invest in every one of our picks, you would have turned X amount into X amount. And so then you're revealing a little bit more about what the track record looks like. Another big, okay. Also, another point is you have to be clear when we're using back tested results. I don't like to use back tested results. Rarely do we use them because at the end of the day, we want to see a beta test or we want to see real results. All right. Then there's testimonials. This is another big change. It was really hard for us. And I think a lot of people are struggling with this, but we need verified backup for all testimonials. That's never been a super big issue. What hurt us specifically is that we need to reveal the starting stake and how long they invested. And I'll reveal a little more on this in a second, but that was somewhat hard for us because a lot of times people write in testimonials and they just didn't include that information. And so we had like years and years of testimonials, but we didn't have that specific information. And at that point, it's hard to kind of go back and track these people down and get the data that you need.
Yeah.
And we can't use material where a person says, I use my profits to take a 2-month vacation around Europe, unless we know how much that vacation cost. That's to me was a struggle because we had one of my favorite testimonials of all time was this guy who took a selfie of himself with his new boat and he had this sailboat. And he basically wrote us and said, thanks to you guys, I was able to buy a new sailboat. It was my favorite one to use because it's such a correct lifestyle image, but we couldn't use it.
Right. That's hard. Yeah, that's I think people are, I mean, you lose. That's what I think makes people feel sometimes like this is so devastating is that you have this bank of marketing material that you thought was kind of a well you can keep dipping back into. And you're like, well, pretty much this is all off the table now because again, going back and finding the data that you need, or, I mean, like even that statement that you're saying, like the guy sends you a testimonial and says like, you know, this allowed me to do this. Well, it's within the context of his life. Like he's not saying that this paid for it by itself. It's like, but just
right.
A little extra money could have been just enough to tip over and you have no idea. So that's, yeah, there's some hard things to give up.
We had to walk away from a lot of our favorite testimonials. And now part of that is now, of course, learning just that when we seek testimonials to say, how much do you start with? How much do you make? Everything else, just ask them for extra details. Mm-hmm. And if they don't include it, we can immediately reach out to them and request that information. So a couple of the big key changes for us is big claims. We simply have to avoid alluding to a big promise that one will get rich following our insight. You know, there was, and again, I don't feel like we did this whole lot, but there's a lot of get rich claims out there. And it's, at the end of the day, it's better to avoid that anyway, right? That's easy copy to write. Like, hey, you'll get rich quick, right? We always wanted to avoid that. and really talk about a better way of investing and creating the financial future that you want to have. And when it comes to risk disclaimers, probably the biggest thing for us is just to make sure that throughout the promotion that we write, that the entire promotion reflects the level of risk people have to take on in order to use this service. It's not enough to say, just have a quick disclaimer or anything else, but you really want to weave it in that, hey, this is let's just say it's a speculative service, and just be very clear. Look, this is for people who want to speculate with some extra money they may have. This is not for your entire portfolio. This is not a retirement strategy. This is for people who just have some extra money to speculate with, and you just want to make some extra money in the market. This is for you, but please do not please don't bet the farm on this one, right? That kind of
way. I think from a copy perspective, one of the trends that we're coming out of is with the rise of a couple things, but one, super active trading. And I think a very unregulated environment, or you had a lot of copy that was very just income related. Just like you said, it's very easy to tell someone, to give them a mechanism for why they're going to make X amount of money. And we got away from this older model of copy where we were selling investment theses. And it was not, and so some of the best copywriters of the old, like Bill Bonner, Mark Ford, Dan Rosenthal back in the 90s, who taught guys like Ben Savenga and Makepeace and others, they're really like editors. Like they had editorial chops as well as copy chops. And so the best promos used to be these, and I have these old direct mail magalogs all over the place. And like these great like investment editorial pieces written as really exciting. But you have to actually, it's harder to write that kind of a promo. Like you have to know more about markets. You have to be more thoughtful about like the actual type of promotion that you're doing. And it can't just be like, hey, here's a system to make 30,000% and whatever that somebody feels like they can write today.
Right. Absolutely. And so, yeah, again, I think that's a good thing. And it requires us to have people who are writing the copy have a lot of insight and information on the strategy that we're talking about. So again, I mentioned this, but you got to pepper that risk disclaimer throughout, and it has to be visual and audible. That was something that was harder for us to do a lot of times, is just get the audible in there. And it leads to my next point here, is the biggest problem that I've seen is that the copy gets clunky when we have to add all these disclaimers and such into it. I've just seen it so many times where we've had this beautiful promotion written out, and it just, again, it sounds great. It sounds fun. It's very inviting. You can't wait to read more, but then you start peppering in all this legal disclaimer, both visually and audibly, and it just bogs down the copy. And I think that's that struggle that so many people are seeing right now, John, is that their copy is not performing the way it used to. And I think my biggest solution to it is just to find a way to really lean into it and let some of that flow. And I'm going to have a couple examples, but I don't know if if you have an opinion on that, but that's the biggest struggle I've seen. Again, I think the vast majority, right? There's some guys who I truly believe were saying things that shouldn't be said in a copy, but the vast majority of people, it's not that they didn't want to, reveal the risk, or they didn't want to, like, I wanted to show a testimonial with the guy with the boat, right? It's not that we're trying to do anything intentionally misleading, but when you start adding in all this additional legal disclaimers, it just kind of bogs down that copy and makes it a lot less fun.
Yeah, and it slows it down. I do think that I've seen in like I think you're right, the idea of leaning into it and letting it flow. And I'd love to see your examples, because I do think that being able to like put the kind of the disclaimers in the copy can actually add a lot of strength in, because it's veracity, it's truth. It's like, I mean, right. I remember writing a promo years and years ago where I think we said, like, if we were talking about the risk in trading, and it's like, look, literally the only reason you can make money with trading is because you're trading risk between people. That's what trading is, and what it's about, transfer of risk. And so it's inherently a risky thing. But so I think there are ways that if you bring it into copy and really, like, I think the problem is when you always have to tack on like the same sentence over and over again and say things exactly the same way. It gets very dry, boring, and annoying for the listener versus finding ways to keep it fresh and let it flow in and say, like, this is just part of the conversation. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I 100% agree. So take a couple look at these examples. So track record. Okay, so let's just say, and again, this isn't exact examples from our copy, but this is something that we may have written before a couple years ago. Paul has made gains of 100% on Netflix, 500% on Amazon, and 1,000% on Tesla. Now with these changes, we have to state more detail. So Paul has made gains of 100% in 5 months on Netflix, right? So we got to put the time in. 500% in 8 months on Amazon, and 1,000% in 1 year on Tesla. Gains like these are not normal, even for Paul. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. So that gets clunky, right? All of a sudden you're talking about the amount of time it takes for every single one. And honestly, sometimes my copywriters do, by the way, another hint, and I didn't write this in there, but read this stuff out loud when you write this stuff, because it can get very, very clunky when you read it. Even though visually it probably isn't much different, but when you read it out loud, when we're doing a lot of videos, this gets very clunky. So what I typically suggest, and a better way of saying it is, in the last year alone, all right, assuming this has all happened in a year, right? But in last year alone, you got the time down, right? So we got that disclaimer out there. In the last year alone, Paul's top gains include 100% on Netflix, 500% on Amazon, and get this, 1,000% on Tesla. Best part is you don't have to invest a ton of money to make a ton of money with gains like these. Just $1,000 would have resulted in a X $1,000 windfall. All right, so when you look at that, we really wove in a lot of disclaimers. Again, in the last year alone, we were clear that these are his top gains. We also were very clear that you didn't have to put a ton of money in to have the chance to make a ton of money. I probably should put the term, the words, make it,
Right.
the chance to make in there. And then you also, we were able to put in that even just $1,000, we can show a visual of $1,000 turning into several $1,000s. So we wove in all the disclaimers that are asked for. It took a little bit longer, and that's kind of what I mean by leaning into it and just taking your time with it versus trying just to hammer that legal disclaimers in there. So I think anyone can look at this and say, okay, actually, if you even look at the original version of this versus the last version, the last version is better. And with
I agree. I think it gets stronger in each version. So
yeah, exactly. So because now we have the time reference in it, and it just feels like, honestly, something that a reputable person would say, right? We're being very clear about the amount of risk that's in there. And again, and I should mention as we go through these examples, keep in mind, these are things that are somewhat hypothetical. In copy, obviously this is taken out of context. So there's other legal disclaimers woven throughout the copy. So don't take everything verbatim and say, well,
right.
Aaron said on a video to do this and we can do it and it'll be fine. That's my legal disclaimer. Example 2, testimonial. So originally, again, we'd have someone say, like, write in, let's say his name is Mike. Mike says, I made $1 million following Paul Myopic. For the longest time, it's like, okay, we got this guy, emailed it in, he made $1 million. That's what we would use. And typically in copy, we'd say, like, take a look at other people following my service. Mike says, I made $1 million following Paul Myopic. Tammy says, I made 500,000. And Phil says, I made 1.5 million. And we just kind of list them off and keep going. And so we can't do that anymore because we need more details around it. So some of the adjustments we have to make is the starting stake and the amount of time it takes, right? This is something that was very clear to us that we had to start doing. So Mike says, I made $1 million following Paul Myopic. Mike invested $250,000 and it took 4 years to make these gains. All investments are risky, so don't bet the farm. Mike's experience is not typical. So there you have all the legal disclaimers in there, yet it's very clunky. And so obviously this is where a lot of people, I think, struggle with that transition again, and they're losing sales because the copy just got real clunky. And this is what I've gone back to all my copywriters with it and said, guys, look, quit just trying to plug that legal copy into it and actually just make it a part of the copy, make it enjoyable, lean into it some. And so this is better. It takes longer, by the way, so we don't do as many testimonials, but we might just focus on Mike's story a little bit longer. So here's a better way to say it. Take Mike, for example. He's a small business owner from Oklahoma. He's been with Profits Unlimited for 4 years now. He believed in Paul's strategy so much, he invested $250,000, $250,000. You didn't have to invest that much. You could invest just $10,000 or even $1,000. However, after he saw the potential, he felt comfortable investing more, and it paid off. In fact, get this, he just wrote us this amazing letter. I made $1 million following Paul Mapilli. That's enough to take a vacation around Europe, buy a boat, and a summer house. Heck, Mike could do all three. And while these are exceptional returns, no doubt about it, others have experienced some results. And then you go on to your next person, right? So we took a lot more time talking about Mike's experience and really woven all that in the legal language, but it didn't feel clunky, did it?
Not at all. And so to me, like I would even argue that what you would see there is the movement from like a newer copywriter to a much more experienced one, because you've taken something that is a really strong element and you've turned it into a story that has much more impact, because now you have a story, you have a little arc. He's in the customer's shoes. Here's somebody who's been with us and he believed in the strategy and he put his money, which is what we want people to be doing, because if they're not, then they're not going to stay. So to me, that's a better thing. And just right now, like I wonder if part of some of these problems that we've had is like knock-on effect of the move to the VSL, because reading, like this looks to me like some very old kind of classic copy in print, and in video it doesn't flow as well. And so I think a lot of the edit, like we get used to saying things faster in video, and I think maybe a lot of the stuff that we as an industry did more of before has kind of gotten whittled away because of that format change.
Yeah, and I think for anyone watching right now, that's an amazing nugget to take away, is just to, again, read your copy out loud and understand. I've had this conversation with my copywriters a ton. You're no longer like writing for print. You're writing, you're script writers. And so much is not what you say, but how you say it. And if we were to video this, I would love to even, for me, I'd probably even slow this down more and just really talk about it. Like he invested $250,000. Okay, let's talk about that point real quick. So typically a copywriter will say this, oh, we have to state the starting amount, 250 grand. Oh, that means his return only went up 400%. That's not that amazing anymore. Over 4 years, that sounds bad. But when you actually write it into the copy the way we wrote it in, it sounds like a very solid proof point. He believed in Paul's strategy so much, he invested $250,000. He didn't have to invest that much. He could invest just 10 or 1,000. However, after he saw the potential, he felt comfortable investing more. Now it's like you took it from being a negative to a positive. So every time, I guess that's just my encouragement. Every time you feel like there's something that's a negative, really take your time, look at it, and almost position it. It's there in front of you. Now come to the side and look at it from this angle, and turn it around, look at it from that angle. Pull a Tony Stark thing, right? Where you're spinning it around in the air and you're looking at the different angles to see how can I position this as a positive.
Yeah, because I mean, it is. It's like, and actually just going through this, it makes me feel more comfortable with like kind of the focus on compliance, is that it's like you have to take more time. Now, I'd like to, I know you have more examples, and then I want to get into like, there's an operational element to doing this now.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your take on that.
Here's an example 3, and I have like 5 examples, so don't worry everyone, I'm not going to have you sit here for 3 hours or anything like that. But so big claims, originally we would say something like, if you invest in the stock today, you can make gains of 10,000%. All right, that's the kind of language we once used. So the adjustments, we can't say that anymore, right? We simply but here's what we can say, and this is better, right? The data is clear. The data is clear. Artificial intelligence will grow 4,000% during the next decade. And you can have a source on the page, Grandview Research. All this data is out there. Okay, guys, just Google it. Go to Grandview. Statistica, I think is the other one I use all the time, but Grandview Research has all this data, right? Artificial intelligence will grow 4,000% during the next decade. And this tiny company that I'm about to tell you about in a moment is at the heart of this growth. Investing in the stock today, it's like investing in Amazon back in 2000 before it shot up 10,000%, which might explain why Bill Gates, Mark Cuban, and Warren Buffett already loaded up on shares. All right, so we went from the original, which was like you could make gains of 10,000%. And that's just honestly lazy copy, right? That's just you're playing on emotions, and most people look at that and they're going to be like, yeah, you know, I can make 10,000% going to the casino tonight too, but it doesn't feel real, and you're not selling me really. What we did is then we took the data that's available, and if you go to Grandview Research or Statistic, and there's several other ones, but you look up, you know, what's the growth of artificial intelligence over the next decade, of EVs, of IoT, of batteries, of every single sector in the market. It shows you the growth potential, and they're all like 1,000% to 10,000%. So all you're saying at the end of the day is like, look, artificial intelligence is a sector of the market that's going to grow a ton. And what I did as the expert here is I found the company that's leading the way in artificial intelligence. Most people don't know about this company, which most people don't, assuming it's not going to be the recommendation of Apple or something. And I'm going to tell you about it today. And I personally believe that investing in the stock today, it's kind of like investing in Amazon back in 2000 before it shot up 10,000%. Now, we never said the stock is going to go up 10,000%, but we did compare it to a stock that did actually go up 10,000%. And of course, if you're using that example, you do want to be able to show how it's similar to Amazon and everything like that. Right. But clearly the latter is stronger and
dramatically stronger.
Yeah. And it's also more compliant.
Yeah, it's almost like it's making me think, did Gary Bencivenga get his retirement job at the FTC because he was always, as a copywriter, he's like, my secret weapon is research. And all the best copywriters I know focus on research, and
that was a lot before the World Wide Web. The research is right at your fingertips. It's pretty easy to pull up some of this data. You don't have to go to the library. Quick, another example for another big claim. I dealt with this one this morning, John, so it was kind of funny. Someone called me early this morning and said, hey, how can we do this? So the original was, what's inside the bag could be the key to turning your next $10,000 investment into a $110,000 windfall. And they're shockingly, of course, and not shockingly, being sarcastic, but the legal team said, well, we can't say that. So what I said is, what's inside, here's the adjustment you could make. What's inside the bag is the key that could have turned a $10,000 investment into $110,000 over the last decade. So you have to put the time frame in there. That's all I did, is really put the time frame in there. But what's even better is inside this bag is the key that has already turned 10,000 into 110,000, not just once, not just twice. I'm talking about a dozen times over the last decade. Okay, some of this is assuming the data is there and that they've done the research. But again, you just can't come out there anymore and say that this is the key to turning $10,000 into 110,000. You have to put the time reference in there. With this one, again, this isn't complete. We probably want to add some risk disclaimer in there somewhere, but you get the idea of how you could do this and really play it up more. Another quick, okay, maybe that's it. I think I have 4 examples. 2 other quick things I want to make note of, and this is so important, and I really want people to hear this. 2 other big adjustments that you should make. Amazing customer service. Okay, you got to have it. And when I've seen the FTC really crack down on people, it usually results from a negative customer service experience. And I don't know if have you seen the same thing, John?
100%. It's almost like guaranteed that was the initial trigger for everything that I've heard of.
Right. So again, it just goes back to like, have a great customer service team, really invest in them. If you can't do your own customer service team, work with a great company that can handle your customer service calls. We're very fortunate to have a great customer service team. And if someone calls and complains, refund the money. I mean, we've said this a million times. Just if someone is upset, just refund the money. It doesn't it's not worth it to get a complaint to anyone, the Better Business Bureau or any other company, and handle that. Be on top of that, by the way. Be on top of the Better Business Bureau. If someone's complaining, you want to be on top of there and making sure you're handling all complaints. And that kind of dovetails into the next point, which is reputational management. When I was in this industry, even just when I joined Agora in 2015, this wasn't anything really on my mind. But we very quickly realized this is such an important part of our success. So reputational management. Mm-hmm. Today, buyers love to be informed. Before they buy a product, they want to go on Google and just Google our product name, Google our company's name, and just make sure people are saying good things about it. And so this is super, super important to be on top of. And so really all you got to do is just Google some reputational management strategies. It does take, really, we have a dedicated team allocated towards it, and takes a lot of work from your gurus to be doing Twitter, YouTube videos, Facebook, to be working sometimes with a PR company to get on media outlets and talking about who you are and what you stand for and everything. So it takes a lot of work. But at the end of the day, when someone Googles your product name, your guru, you wanted to come back as saying something positive. And unfortunately, it's such a frustrating environment because we know that, a lot of times there's the 20-year-old blogger out there who says, Aaron DeHoog and Banyan Hill is a scam, and they write an article on it. And it can get ranked up really high, really fast, and it's just complete BS. But that's the environment we're in. And so you have to constantly manage that kind of stuff and find ways to outrank it.
Yeah, it's just doing business in 2022. I'm really proud of myself for getting the year correct this close to New Year's, by the way. Yeah, it's just the nature of the beast anymore, is that people can say whatever they want. You can't, because you have your business, but people can say whatever they want about your business online, and by and large. And there's right. Even the review sites that some of them are legit and some of them are just people trying to hustle businesses to pay them to remove false bad reviews because it's such a problem.
Yeah, it's a really different environment than it was a few years ago. And when that stuff gets up there, once it's up there and out of control, it's really hard to get it down. So we work super hard on it. One thing I'll throw out there is we have this phrase that we use around Agora called HAT. It's honest, authentic, transparent. And this is just really a phrase we use because at the end of the day, when you look at your promotion, you're done writing it, the editor's done reviewing it, gives it okay, just really look at it, say, look, is it honest? Is it authentic? Is it transparent? Is the offer honest? Are you really sure that they're getting what they're paying for? Is the voice authentic? Do you, at the end of the day, is it something you feel fine, showing your family, showing your friends and saying, hey, check this out? And is it just transparent throughout? Like whether it's the track record, the testimonials, is it completely transparent? Is the risk transparent? So that's a phrase we use within our organization. It's just going through, looking at the copy from a HAT perspective. And then consider doing an interview. I have no idea what that point is about. Oh, I think that is, I think I'm just referring to doing interviews on TV and interviewing other people to get a name out there. So, I want to talk about our successes and failures, but I'll take a moment.
Well, can I back up for a second? Because each of those points, by and large, the first two in particular, and some degree the doing PR too. That's staff. That's somebody's job. So you've had to expand your staff, I would imagine. Doing amazing customer service, everyone has to have customer service. And so it's really about quality. But like reputational management, you said you actually have a team. And I remember at the one time in Baltimore, you were talking about how much you've really put into reputational management. Like it's a serious thing that you have to, so it's not something that is a throwaway thing that somebody does one time. You actually build this into your business and you focus on the customer service team, right? So are there a lot of operational changes that you've had to make when you consider all these kind of changes? Because even the testimonial piece, like somebody has to ask then for the rest of the data.
Yeah. So A lot of it is, yes. I mean, I would definitely say our copy process has been a big change. But yeah, logging all the testimonials has been big for us. We now started using a new system that logs in all the testimonials, make sure you have the original email, and like the start date of the customer, and all the data behind that customer. And we try to follow up with that customer to get more data from them, because the more the better. And one thing we do within Banyan Hill and Agora is, as we even start writing the promotion very early on, we send our copy over to what we call the claims and integrity team. And so they look at the copy very early on to say, okay, some of these financial claims you're making about the track record, we just want to check off and make sure that these are accurate. And a lot of times this is just making sure that our copywriter is not making a mistake, right? And that they're not misreading how we're presenting ourselves. So we do that kind of stuff very, very early on. So yes, there's definitely some operational changes. I think for a lot of people who are watching, maybe the idea of getting someone on your staff who is in charge of their reputation is tricky to do. It's hard to find someone that's really good at it, but definitely consider working with an outside company. It can be expensive. I remember early on, we paid a company like $10,000 a month to work with us. And it helped a little bit, but not a ton. Then we were able to kind of land someone who has like basically two teams with two people within our company internally, just constantly monitoring that stuff. So it does take extra expenses, but you also have to think about, do you want your company to be have a sustainable business model? And if you're going to be around in this world, like you said, it's 2022 now, and we're in this world, the metaverse world, right? And everything's online, and so you have to make sure your online presence is strong, and really pay attention to that. It's just going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, it's going to get to the point where no one's going to buy your product until they do a Google search on you and your company. And so you have to really plan on that and not see it as a negative, but a positive. And a way to get ahead of your competition.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point too, because the market side, like I've been saying this for a while now, the industry's mainstreaming a bit. Like the size of our universe, we've been in this, a bull market in independent investors for 7-8 years, if not longer, and that's continuing. But now, like, we've seen this explosion in the amount of people who come into the industry. Like trading and investing happens much younger, and so that's just going to continue. It's a generational shift. The millennials are the biggest generation in history, and they haven't hit the first one turned 40 this year, and so they're just getting into their prime investing years. And so our customer universe is going to, I think, more than double. So being there, being able to actually maintain a business through that is important.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. Never before in our history have we had so many people picking up their cell phones and making trades. And the reality is, here's the reality. Okay, right now most people are doing pretty well on their own, because when I go onto my Robinhood account, it has 10 stocks listed there. Some of the stocks are Apple and Tesla, and so a lot of people are like, yeah, I'll buy Tesla and I'll buy Apple. And those stocks have just gone up, up, up. And so, but at a certain point, they won't go up any longer. And I think at that point is where it's like, that's where we want to be at, is when people start struggling, realizing maybe they're not as good as they thought. And then they start Googling, how can I become a better investor, or whatever it is, and then we pop up, and that's where we can get that order. That's where all that time and energy you put into an amazing customer service team and into reputational management is going to pay off. And so that time is coming. Again, we got to think about that, John. I think you bring up a good point. A lot of people are investing on their own, and historically speaking, people have done bad on their own. But I think over the last year or two, they've done great on their own. But that's not always going to be that scenario. So we're going to probably see a shift in that over the next few years, as probably some of these tech stocks start to settle out.
Yeah. No, I think whenever there's a crash, everyone pays attention much more. Whenever there's a pullback, like we seem to grow as an industry. So
we're all brilliant in a bull market.
Yeah.
I'll quick talk about some of the successes and failures, because obviously we're trying a lot of things, right? We're trying a lot of things that are, thinking outside the box, and like, how else can we market our products that might be unique or different? So you wrote me an email and said, hey, a lot of people try to rewrite their promotions and it's not working. And I'll just say right here, every promotion we've tried to rewrite has flopped, especially front ends. I think if you try this, you really got to lean into it and literally splice the video with an interruption, where maybe you're watching your traditional video and then all of a sudden there's the guru pops up. Hey, just a quick update. I want to be clear. Investing is risky, something like that. But me personally, every time I've tried to rewrite, and every time one of my copywriters try to rewrite a promotion, it just has not worked. I've not seen one success. And that was a lot of
That's very interesting. Yeah.
We've tried humor. All right. If you guys check out profitsunlimited.com, we used humor and kept it right to the key points. And by key points, I'm talking about basically, what is our service, describing what we do and everything else like that. What we found is hard to get orders, and lifetime value was very low compared to our traditional marketing. So even after we look back at these guys after 6 months and a year, they just weren't spending like the people who had watched our longer form promotions, because this video is only like 2 minutes long. We've created other versions as well, such as profitsunlimited.com/today. And that focused more on those who are trying to invest on their own. And that has been, had a moderate success. Overall, though, this has been a failure. So, and again, I've always been told, don't try to use humor in promotions. And maybe that's true. It's definitely hard because a lot of people, obviously E-Trade must have done something right because their commercials are hilarious. And they've got a lot of people who have signed up over the past 2 or 3 decades to use their services. But it's always a weird mixed emotion, because when it comes to money, it's kind of more of a serious issue. But if you guys haven't seen it, it's a great promo to go and watch at profitsunlimited.com. I think the big thing we failed in that one is we kind of showed how our product was different than Wall Street. Whereas I think right now, most people aren't investing with the Merrill Lynch's and the big Wall Street firms. A lot of them are investing on their own through Robinhood. And so that's why if you actually look at the updated one with the /today on it, that one kind of is a little bit better of an angle where it's talking about comparing, hey, this is what happens when you try to invest on your own. Why not use one of our guides to help you in investing?
Yeah. Interesting.
So one thing that's worked great for us is endorsements. The promotion we have out there is called Miracle on Main Street, and I hyperlinked it. Of course, we're watching a video, so people can't click on the hyperlink. But we use an endorsement from Mike Huckabee so that we wouldn't have to make big claims. Our experience is that whoever is endorsing the product has to truly believe in the product. They really do it for money. This was a big success for us. This promotion's been out for a little over 6 months now. And now, again, a lot of people who are watching this are probably thinking, well, I'm glad you're able to land Mike Huckabee. That's not something I can do. And this was not an easy journey. This was probably like a 2 or 3 year journey for us to try to, partner up with a big name person. And we had a couple failures along the way. But Mike Huckabee worked out great just because it was more of a natural relationship. We, working with our PR agency, we were able to get our guru here, Charles Mizrahi, on the Mike Huckabee show. And from there, Mike Huckabee and Charles started talking, from a relationship. Charles then had Mike Huckabee on his podcast, said, hey, you should really check out my service. And Mike Huckabee started using it and liked it. And then we were able to say, hey, you want to do something with us where we can promote this product? And so it was completely authentic. It wasn't like, hey, we paid you X amount of dollars, say you like our product. It was an authentic experience for Mike where he's like, no, I'm using this, and this is a really cool product. I'm using it to make money. And he really was a person who always wanted to invest more in the stock market and in specific stocks, and struggled to find out how to do that. And we were able to show him how.
That's a really great story. One, because I love Charles. I think he's phenomenal. And he, there's always been this dichotomy in copywriting conversations about, oh, well, the best products don't sell. And I know Charles is a phenomenal investor. He's got a great product, and he's like, when people ask me, like, which product, who am I going to recommend to my mom if I was going to invest? Like who would I trust? I would trust Charles. Like, I know it, like 1,000% I would trust Charles. Like he's phenomenal, and he's a really deep thinker about investing, and he's not like, but he's out there. He's actually he's doing things in the PR and going out and doing like interviews and talking to building real relationships. Like you brought up earlier, like your guru has to be better now. And it's interesting to me that we have so many gurus now, and it's like, it's not that they're bad. It's just that they're disconnected from the industries that they cover. They're not as involved anymore in like what's happening in a sector. Maybe they're not getting out there as much, and so their relationships degrade over time, and they don't have as many connections to be able to form those kind of relationships. And a lot of publishers don't know how to even start to do that, to get their guys out there and talking to people and doing stuff. But I think it's such an important thing. Like, what makes a great guru? And can you be just a pure analyst who's completely disconnected from everything anymore? Because now, like, the marketing and the story kind of are merging together to the point where you have to be in the mix a little bit. I think anyway.
No, I 100% agree. And Charles, like, and by the way, I'm going to do a little plug. I met Charles through your Financial Marketing Summit event back in 2017, and that's something, you know, probably a lot of people are asking, well, how do you find these great gurus? And it really is, at the end of the day, just going out there and networking. I know it's a little harder than it used to be with the COVID-19 environment, but there's ways to get out there and market, whether you're doing it through online events or just simply going on LinkedIn, whatever it is. You want to make those connections and bring on the right people.
Yeah, and that's where we're trying to start and do more of those editorial focused events where we can bring in people from other industries just to build those relationships with people, because like, it is hard sometimes for people to go out and meet people in a sector.
Yep, absolutely. One of the other successes we've had is just what still works. This has always been working for us, right? It's an exciting tech opportunity. This is really a classic formula where we talk about a new technology and tease the idea that we know the one stock that will be the winner as tech rises. The key here is to talk about the big gains that the technology will make. Again, going back to Grandview or some big research firm that talks about how much AI is going to grow over the next decade. This promotion here is a great example. It's working for us right now. It's called Imperium. And so really what they're talking about with Imperium is really using genomics, genetic editing, basically what we've all seen that's happened with the vaccines and all that advancement, and how there's a lot of companies that you can invest in that are helping with using basically AI and genetic engineering to create these biotech companies, basically. So that's worked out great for us. Again, that's just a classic model that is kind of our go-to. You look at, hey, at the end of the day, there's this technology that's just taken off. And there's no doubt it's going to continue to take off because of all the trends that are happening. And let's find the one company that has the most potential. Mm-hmm. So that's always a success for us. Another big success we've always had is big economic prediction. You can still go that route, right? This is when a guru makes a bigger economic prediction. These are usually protected since you're not making a specific profit claim. One of our promotions is called America 2.0, and it's a great example. That's been a huge success for us. So in America 2.0, we're just really talking about how in America, our economy is just upgrading to new technology opportunities. Like, we're making these upgrades when it comes to whether it's your phone or computers with 5G, with AI and all this stuff, and just investing in those America 2.0 companies and how they're really going to help the entire market go up, but the stock market go up. But if you invest in the right companies, you have the potential to make a lot more money. One other thing I've seen work, this isn't mine, I'm stealing this from another company, Agora Financial. And I thought this was kind of clever. Before you can even watch the video, you have to basically sign off on this, this legal disclaimer. As you'll see in bold, writing. It says, by clicking the box below, you acknowledge that all investing, including cryptocurrency, carries risk. Fortunes can be made and lost overnight. So that's something that if you're watching this, you can try that out. And it seems to work well from them. It doesn't keep people from watching the video. If anything, it kind of gets them to lean in and like, all right, well, I know this and I'm excited to learn more. And again, not that you still have to weave that legal disclaimer language throughout the body copy, but this is just an extra layer of protection that I think we're going to see a lot more people taking. I know we're going to try it out with our copy. So those are the successes and failures that I've seen.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that there at the end too. That's cool. It's definitely worth testing.
So I'll kind of bring back to the big picture and just, I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but again, guys, I really truly believe that the FTC crackdown that we've seen is good for an industry. We just have to adjust to it. All right. Things are changing. And if we're real with ourselves, it's not just the FTC crackdown. We've seen crackdowns come from ad networks where they're being much more strict on what you can and cannot say on ad networks. We've seen our email accounts get much more strict on what is allowed and not allowed. Canned spam issues. And, now we have to have, for us, I think we have to have people click on our emails over the last 60 days, maybe 90 days, in order to keep showing up in inboxes at all. So not opens, clicks. So it has been this like onslaught, I think, over the last 2 years. If people are feeling exhausted, it's because it's been an uphill battle. But I want to mention a small victory for us. Maybe this is a silver lining, but just as we've, over the last 2 years, as we've implemented a lot of these changes, our refund rate has gone from 26% to 15%. Now, we have a very liberal refund rate. So if someone signs up for any of our front-end products, they can try it out for a full year. If they don't like it, they can get a full refund. And as we become really much more honest, authentic, and transparent in our copy, we've seen that reduction in refund rates. So people feel like, hey, I bought this product. This is what they told me it was, and this is what it is. I'm keeping it. And that's a big adjustment. I mean, that's all like to what I call it basically free money, right? Before every $100 we bring in, before we were refunding 26% of it. And that was just like 2 years ago. Now it's 15%. That is a massive reduction. And we've seen that across a lot of the companies who are implementing these policies.
That's awesome.
I'll also add that our retention rate is up about 5%. Still not where I want it to be, but our annual retention rate, so year 1 to year 2, is up about 5% across the board as we've been able to implement these things. So our overall revenue is down. Even our profits are down a little bit over the last 2 years. But these are some things that I think we're proud of as we continue to implement these things. And I'll just kind of leave it with this. Eventually, these guys, the guys who are, we're kind of going to battle with out there on ad networks, who are not using the gloves, who are not using the guidelines we're talking about, they're going to get called out. And right now it's a little bit of an unfair fight when it's on the ad networks, but I'd say just I just want to encourage you to keep doing the right thing. And I think it's going to pay some massive dividends for us. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I covered a lot, and maybe there's a couple of things you want to discuss that.
No, that was amazing. I think that was super useful and helpful. Because I think people are scared. Like you said, it's been a lot of different things, and it just feels like every time somebody gets over, like, okay, we've dealt with this issue, and now it's like something else is thrown at them. And it can grind people down. It's hard enough being an entrepreneur or building a business. And when you have rough times, like that force some fundamental changes, or takes things that were working and makes them not work anymore. It's hard for people. It sucks.
Yeah, it's hard, but and I think it's been a lot over the last, really 2 years. But at the end of the day, every business goes through this, right? Every single business out there has gone through a lot, and part of it is just understanding the new reality and leaning into it and figuring out a way to make it work. It comes to, I call it grit, right? You got to have grit in order to really succeed in any business, and our business is different.
Absolutely. No, and I do. I think, like, that, your perspective on this is, I think, really helpful and refreshing, because it's very easy to catastrophize everything, and be like, no, it's the end of the world. But because I have to make these small changes that actually, in some cases, like I said, I think that a lot of it has just been like, the laziness that we all get. And the other part, I think, is that for a long time, I mean, it's so hard. Talent, like, I feel like in the industry, we compete on talent. That's the primary place of competition, is finding talent, because it's a small industry. There's direct response is a very skill kind of driven business, and copywriters have been one of those people or groups that there's just not enough of them who are good, and you can't get anything out the door unless something's written. And so I think that as an industry, we tend to lean much more towards the copywriter thinking, which is good and bad. Everything has a a benefit, but like, copywriters tend to think very short term. We tend to think about the promotion. We think about the sales on this promotion right here. Does this one promotion work? Versus, am I getting a customer that I want to keep, or who will stay with me for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years? And I think that, like, I mean, there's 1,000 stories of that cycle playing out, of the difference between a short-term customer on a promo that seems to work but then doesn't. And I think that a lot of those claims and a lot of those issues, the way that you framed them, is like, oh yeah, this is essentially, like, a lot of it's just lazy copywriting.
Yeah.
And we're not doing right by our business, and we're not doing right by the customer in that sense. And that's why the FTC is kind of up in arms.
Exactly. So I think it's a good, almost like shakeout, if you will, of our industry, where, the companies that have always put their customers first, who've always said, hey, we're going to put our customers first, we're going to create the best products for them, they're going to do just fine. It's still not easy. The last 2 years haven't been easy, but I think those who get through this and have a very strong copy team who can think outside that box and see a different way to market the product, they're going to succeed, and they're going to have a more sustainable business, and it's a lot more fun. I mean, every single day, one thing we do at our company is our office manager sends out an email to everyone with kind of like our top testimonial that came in from the day before. And we just kind of celebrate that, right? It's like, hey, here's someone who wrote in, who's made money following us, and look how we've changed our lives. And we do that because we always want to make sure that we're keeping that customer first, that we're never putting profits ahead of our customers. I do believe you take care of that customer in the long run, that those profits are going to pan out. They're going to be there, right? Because you're going to get a customer for life, not just for the next month or year. It's like someone you're going to get for life.
Right. Yeah, that's I think a great perspective. So I really appreciate you talking about this. Like I said earlier, like, a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about this stuff publicly, but it's our industry. We need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think you shared a lot of really useful, helpful stuff for everybody. So very much appreciated, Aaron.
Absolutely. Thank you, John, so much for hosting this. And I'll be seeing you soon, I believe, in the Bahamas.
Yes, I will. We'll see you there at the accelerator. Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care.